This is the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and these are all the official Apple cases for the 17 Pro Max. Let's start off with the tech woven case. The tech woven case comes in 5 colors: blue, purple, sienna, black, and the green that I have here. On Apple.com, it says the case is made from custom technical woven fabric, which is made from 100% recycled polyester. It also says the sides of the case are coated with a lightly textured TPU for better grip. So that's all well and good, but let's take a look at the case. Inside the case seems to be the exact same tech woven fabric that we find on the outside of the case. And then on the inside of the frame is the exact same coating as what's on the outside here, which honestly feels just like the fine woven case from last year. So here's a look at the green tech woven case with the silver iPhone 17 Pro Max installed. For me personally, this is my favorite combination of the tech woven case with the silver iPhone 17 Pro Max. It's totally valid for you to have a different opinion, which I'd love to hear down in the comments below. I have pretty mixed feelings about the back texture of this case. I have had some moments where this does feel kind of like large grain sandpaper to me, and it's not really the most comfortable feeling. I know in previous years the fine woven case wasn't the most durable, but it did have a nicer feel in the hand than the tech woven. Something nice about the tech woven case is that it does have a little subtle piece of foam between the case fabric and the body of the case inside, which just gives it the slightest bit of squish when you're pushing down on it. Here's a look at the case from the front. Looking along the edges here, you can see the slightest bit of the silver frame of the phone, which might bother some people. Looking at the left side of the case, you have your anodized aluminum buttons, which are floating, clicky, and responsive. The side of the case is that lightly textured TPU that has really good grip and is, I think, the same as what they had on the fine woven cases. If you've never felt this before, the closest thing I can equate it to is like fine jean fabric. On the right side of the case is your anodized aluminum side button and your color matched camera control button, which looking at a little closer is not really installed the best, so we might be taking a trip to the Apple Store to give an exchange for one that's got a slight better installation job. Generally speaking, MagSafe on the Apple cases is really good. It's going to be perfectly suitable for desktop mounts and car vent mounts, though this case is not going to win any awards for outstanding MagSafe strength, mostly due to the fact that this is not really a grippy texture when it comes to MagSafe accessories. Looking at the bottom, you have your 2 mounting points for the crossbody strap that Apple's introduced, cutouts for your microphone and speaker, and a cutout for your charging port. Something to note about this charging port is that it is a little bit sharp here on the top and the bottom. So if you are someone who uses your pinky a lot around the bottom of the phone, just know that it might not be in for the nicest treat. The lip protection on this case is pretty minimal, and this is with a screen protector installed. So if it was removed and had a screen protector, it would definitely be a lot better. Looking at the back, there's definitely enough camera lip here to keep your lenses from rubbing against surfaces. So that's the tech woven case from Apple, which sells for $59. Overall, it's a pretty decent case, though it does have a couple little flaws. Most notably for me is just the destroyer of my pinky down here. Next up is the Apple silicone case. Apple says that this case is made with 45% recycled silicone. The silicone case comes in 6 different colors: neon yellow, midnight, orange, terracotta, black, and what I have, which is called purple fog. Inside the silicone case is a microfiber material that's going to help keep your phone free from scratches. This fabric is not just on the back and actually wraps up into the sides of the edge as well. Now here's a look at the purple fog silicone case in the silver 17 Pro Max. What I really like about the Apple silicone cases is how nice and smooth and silky they feel when you first get them. But unfortunately, as you use them and they wear in, they get pretty grippy, which some people might like, but for me it gets to a point where it starts pulling out pocket lint and makes the case look kind of dirty. You can just wipe that off, but it is just a minor annoyance that I personally have noticed over all the years of using silicone cases from Apple. Last year my silicone case for the iPhone 16 Pro didn't really hold up the best. It started to wear around the edges where I held it the most, and the actual corners of the case itself wore down just from me putting the phone in and out of my pocket. So I might have to hold on to this case just to see how it wears in compared to the previous year. Here's a look at the case from the front. It does kind of have that same thing as the tech woven case, where you can see the silver parts of the phone here sticking out around the edges of the case. Looking at the left side, you can see the volume buttons and the action button. These buttons are attached to the case and are all clicky and responsive, just how the actual buttons of your phone are. On the right is your side button, as well as a color-matched camera control button. I'm not going to test the camera control button on these cases because these are Apple cases sold from the Apple Store, so they should all work perfectly. If that button wasn't working properly on any of these cases, I would just get in contact with Apple to do a warranty exchange, or do a return and swap if you're within your 2-week return period. At the bottom is your cutout for your charging port, speaker, and your microphone. as well as the 2 mounting points for the crossbody strap. The charging port cutout is very similar to the tech woven case, so it is a little sharp feeling, though not quite as much because this is soft silicone compared to the hard material of the tech woven case. The screen lip on this case is very similar to the tech woven case. It's pretty minimal with a screen protector installed, and it would obviously increase if you were to remove that screen protector. Looking at the back is the lip for your camera lenses, which in this case is plenty enough to keep them from rubbing against tabletops and other surfaces. Now, as far as MagSafe goes, like we covered, it's going to be strong enough for desktop mounts and car vent mounts. Though again, not winning any awards when it comes to MagSafe strength. Now you might be thinking, oh Jay, that's kind of unfair. You're putting them on a MagSafe stand and shaking them. Of course they're going to fall off. But here's an example of a case that does have really good MagSafe strength, doing the exact same test. And you'll see here that it doesn't fall off. The Apple silicone case sells for $49, and as far as silicone cases go, is a pretty good option, especially if you're after something that has that Apple branding. Next up is a case that has taken some steps forward, but also a strange step back, and that is the Apple Clear case. Now the Apple Clear case sells for $49, and while you might think that's pretty expensive, it actually holds up pretty well. Last year, I did a drop test with the Clear case from Apple for my iPhone 16 Pro, and I was pretty surprised with the amount of damage it took and how well it stayed together. Apple says this case is crafted with a blend of optically clear polycarbonate and flexible materials. And so kind of my experience when I did that drop test is that it breaks in the way that a car windshield does, where when it's broken, it doesn't just shatter into a bunch of pieces, it's actually kind of held together with a film. Looking at the inside of the case, you'll see that the MagSafe ring and alignment magnet are raised, which is interesting. Here's a look at the Apple Clear case from the front. While you might be able to see the edges of the phone sticking out between the case and the display, since this is a clear case, that doesn't really bother me quite as much. Now here's a look at the Clear case from the back, with the silver iPhone 17 Pro Max installed. The design choice of this case on this phone doesn't really bother me quite as much, because this area of the phone is white. When it comes to putting this case on the Cosmic Orange or the Deep Blue phone, that's where it gets to be a bit more of a divisive design decision. So while I don't mind it so much on this phone, it's interesting that they didn't just go for the MagSafe ring that we see on other cases. Now holding onto this case, I do find it to be a little bit on the slippery side. If your hands are a little bit on the clammy side all the time, that might not be the case. But let's say you live in an environment where it gets a little bit drier. Like in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I am, it gets dry in the winter, and during that season, my hands get more dry, and a clear case like this gets as slippery as a bar of wet soap. On the left side, you have your 3 buttons, which are clicky and responsive, which is one of the biggest improvements I've found with this case. Last year, the buttons were really stiff and had to kind of get worn in to be any good. On the right is your side button and your camera control button, which on the Clear cases is white. The bottom of this case has an open design, which some people might be a little hesitant about, though the Clear case on the 16 Pro has an open design as well, and in my drop test, I never found that the actual phone body took any damage or sustained any impact. Something to keep in mind is that there are no mounting points for Apple's crossbody strap, and interestingly, the only cases that have those mounting points in this video are the first 2 cases we looked at, which are the tech woven and the silicone case. One main downside I find with a case that's open like this is that it has a bit of a tendency to slip off on the corners. It's not to say that the case is going to go flying off. It's more just that the case is a little bit loose down there, which might bother some people. As far as the MagSafe strength when we're shaking it, it's actually a little better than the other 2 cases that we checked, though still not quite as good as the D-brand Ghost that I showed you a little earlier. Now with the Clear case, it's a little tricky to grab focus, but here you can see the general idea of how much lip protection you get for the front screen. It is more than the silicone case and the tech woven case. And again, this is with a screen protector installed. And then here's a look at the camera protection that you get from this case. It's on the minimal side, but it is there. Next up is the brightest case in this video. So you've been warned. You might want to shield your eyes for this one. This is the Beats Rugged case. Now, I know this is Beats branded, but this is a case made by Apple, so that's why it's included in this video. The Beats Rugged case comes in 4 different colors: Rocky Blue, Alpine Gray, Everest Black, and the incredibly bright Sierra Orange. On the Apple website, there is an extra level of marketing jargon about how they've spent thousands of hours in research making this a super protective case. So let's hope that's all true. The inside of this case has a really soft lining, which is going to help keep your phone free from scratches, as well as help with drop protection. Here's a look at the Sierra Orange color of the Beats Rugged case with the iPhone 17 Pro Max in silver installed. The bottom half of the case is covered in these tiny little dots, which I'm sure is supposed to help with grip, but at certain times I find this to be an uncomfortable texture to hold onto, especially down here in this corner where the case is going to make contact with the sensitive part of your hand's skin. Now outside of that textured area of the case, I do find the rest of it to be pretty smooth and kind of slippery. Also, it kind of comes with the territory, but it is a bit on the beefy side. Here's a look at the case from the front so you can get an idea of what I mean. Looking around the inside edge of the case, you can see a bit of the silver part of the phone showing through. Looking at the case from the left, you have that dotted texture on the bottom half, smooth on the top half, and then these dark colored buttons, which are clicky and responsive. And then a camera control button that's set into this little bit of a divot here, which I actually don't mind because it makes it easy to find. Looking at the bottom, you have cutouts for your microphone, speaker, and charging port. There are no mounting points for lanyards anywhere on this case. As far as lip protection goes, this case has plenty of it, even with a screen protector installed. Very similar on the back here, it has good protection for your camera lenses. Testing out the MagSafe strength is going to be interesting because the bottom half of where the MagSafe magnet is has that texture, whereas the top half doesn't. Now, I have full expectation this is going to be fine on a desktop mount, but simulating going over some bumps in a car, this is definitely the weaker of all the magnets that we're testing here. For $79, I don't really think that this case is worth your time or money. Unless you're really committed to the Beats brand, then by all means, go for it. And then last up is a case that has an interesting party trick, and that's the Beats case with this kickstand lanyard. This case comes in 4 different colors: limestone, pebble pink, granite gray, and bedrock blue. Now what's interesting about this case is that there are 2 different versions available for purchase. For $45, you get this case without the stand. And for an additional $14, you get this party trick lanyard stand. The inside of this case has a soft fiber lining to help keep the back of your phone free from scratches. So here's a look at the Beats regular case in bedrock blue with the iPhone 17 Pro Max installed. On the right, a responsive side button and a sort of color matched camera control button. Looking at the bottom of the case, it has an open design similar to the Apple Clear case. So similar to the Apple Clear case, I think this is going to be fine for the majority of drops, particularly if they're on the bottom of the case. It is a bit loose here at the bottom, so a drop directly to the front of your phone might not be the most protected. This case has a smoother texture, so depending on if your hands are clammy or dry, this case might be more grippy or might be a bit more on the slippery side. Screen protection from the lip on this case is pretty decent, even with a screen protector installed. And then on the back, the camera protection is minimal, but it is there. Here's a look at the case from the front. Similar to all the other ones we've looked at, you can see a bit of the body of the phone showing through on the edges. Now, I've been a bit of a tease here and saved this kickstand party trick for last. So on the bottom right, this case has a mounting point for a lanyard loop. The lanyard loop this case comes with can actually pull out and become a little stand here. You can insert your phone just like this to view horizontal video. Now, notice I didn't say vertical because that's something you actually can't do with this. It just falls down. So that's kind of why I say this is more of a party trick. Now I'm curious to see if we put the phone in a case that has a closed bottom, does it stand up? The answer is no. So I don't know. For me, this $14 stand is a cool party trick, but it's not the most practical in everyday use because you're limited to videos that are only horizontal. So keep in mind, if you do like this case and you don't really care about this stand, you can save $14 and get the case for $45. So having looked at these 5 cases that Apple sells, which one would I personally pick out for myself? The answer there is that I think I would just adjust my pinky and I would go with the tech woven case. I hope this video has been helpful, taking a look at all the cases that Apple sells in their retail stores and on their website. If you'd like to pick up any of these cases, I'll put links in the description so you can find them nice and easy. As always, I appreciate that you spent your time with me. Consider subscribing, hit the like button for fun, and I'll see you again.